I expect divided opinions on the Colorado Avalanche. Divided opinions because they had quite the divisive season. You can look at Colorado's record and say, hey, they were worse than what they looked like, and they made the playoffs because the West was weak. Or you can look at them and go, hey, they had some rough spots along the way, but they're a really solid team. And look, they get out of the first round. They upset the Calgary Flames in the first round this year. So they're on to bigger, better things this coming year. And of course, it was a controversial ending of that series against San Jose. So since all that controversy is out there, you could argue Colorado could very well have been a Final Four team this year, and then who knows? Colorado against St. Louis, who knows where that could have gone. But Colorado did take a minor step back during the regular season. They got 90 points. They had 95 the year before. The year prior to that, they had 48 points. That's not a lockout-shortened season. That's a 48-point season. Before that, 82 points, and before that, 90. That 90-point season in 2014-2015 was not good enough to make the playoffs. So it's been a mediocre, mushy kind of team for the most part. And what emerged for Colorado last year was a team that had a dominant first line, some iffy scoring after that first line, which they've looked to address in the offseason. A team which had a unspectacular blue line, and a team with average goaltending. And again, those numbers kind of show up in that they're 10th in goals for, and they're 16th in goals against. 260 goals for, 246 goals against. Those numbers are too close to each other for you to say, okay, well, they look like a contender during the season. But, again, it was really a tale of three different seasons they had. 7-3-2 at the end of October, and they looked pretty good. End of November, they were 15-6-5. And I can remember the comparisons of where they were at and where Buffalo was at. Because in December, it all falls off the rails. They're 19-13-8 by the end of December. End of January, they're 22-20-8. And February, they're 28-24-12. So they start turning things around in February, and definitely the infamous loser point comes in here. 36-29-13, and then at the end of the year, they're 38-30-14. So they win less than half of their games. This is why when people talk about how good they were during the regular season, my response is, well, not really, because even though they may have gone on a nice hot streak at the end of the year, they won less than half of the games they played. They went through that really brutal stretch starting in December that went on for months that I did a long video on how everything was going wrong for Colorado. And a lot of it had to do with Semyon Varlamov, who is now gone. Now, the past two seasons they've been in the playoffs. The previous three they were out. Their MVP for me is Nathan Mackinnon. Everything will revolve around Nathan Mackinnon. Whether that's fair to him or not, that's just the way things work when you've arrived as a superstar. He had 99 points last season. He's going to want to get 100 this year. And I expect that from him as long as the Mikko Rantanen contract situation's cleared up by then. Start of the season, he's got to be there. And, of course, Landeskog has to continue to show his progression. Landeskog had an amazing season, but it's weird because Landeskog has a really solid season, and people want to point to MacKinnon and Rantanen and say, well, it's just because he was with those guys. Landeskog generates so many opportunities on his own, and he does so much on the forecheck, and he's just so bloody strong. He's really underrated. But anyways, that aside, out of their lineup from last year's very solid team, Tyson Barrie, who as soon as he became a Maple Leaf, everybody wanted to talk about what was wrong with him. Carl Soderberg, who moves on to Arizona, and we'll see if that was to the benefit of the Coyotes. And we see now why Colorado moved out Soderberg. Alexander Kerfoot, of course, goes to Toronto as well. He was a good forward until he got to Toronto, and now everybody wants to pick him apart. I've noticed that happens a lot, that players that, you might say, well, he has some flaws in the game, but pretty good player. As soon as the guy's a Maple Leaf, there are people who are going to go, well, look, this is a crap player they picked up. This guy sucks. He didn't suck a month ago, but now that he's a Maple Leaf, sure. Semyon Varlamov moves along. He's with the Islanders. He's going to be trying to prove that the setback year he had last year is not indicative of his game. That being said, I totally understand why the Islanders wanted to move on. They wanted to save some money. They didn't want to spend $5 million to bring him back, and Grubauer emerged as the starter in the playoffs. Grubauer had an amazing playoffs. That being said, he has to show he can do it over a full regular season. He hasn't done that yet. Now, when you look at this lineup, Landeskog, McKinnon, Rantanen, that was the hottest line in hockey through October, November, and it was just a fantastic line. I thought the amount of hype that it got was probably a little bit more than it should have been, but we're now in a state where the media wants to find something to cling on to, and very often it's hot lines, hot players, and who's the big guy right now, what's the big line, and they kind of make it so that even if a line's doing really, really well, they'll make it sound like it's just unstoppable when it's not. No line is unstoppable, as the perfection line proved in the playoffs. Burakovsky, Kadri, and Comfer. So this is where things get different. Does Burakovsky get a top 6 spot? Does Wilson get that spot? No, I think Burakovsky's going to get a shot at a top 6 spot right out of the gate. And Burakovsky should be motivated in coming over to Colorado from Washington to prove he can do this. That would leave Wilson, Jost, and Donskoy on the third line, providing that Donskoy beats out Nieto, his former San Jose teammate. Now they're teammates in Colorado. Donskoy, come on, prove me right here. Prove me right that you're a really solid forward and that you can bounce back from what was a down year for him in San Jose. And for people who get mad that I had Donskoy as my favorite Colorado Avalanche, even though he hasn't played a game there yet, I don't know what to say, but if your favorite player trades teams, does that mean he's not your favorite player anymore? Because, yeah, he was my favorite Shark, too. So, that's kind of weird. Fourth line, just shows online. People will find anything. Matt Calvert, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, fresh from the Vegas Golden Knights. And there's Nieto, unless it ends up being Donskoy. And, of course, lurking around, you've got AJ Greer, who likely is going to be an extra forward. You've got Vladislav Haminev. Martin Kaut. So when's he going to come in and start playing? Sheldon Dries, who I was impressed with during call-ups, but odds are he just becomes a call-up fill-in again. And Logan O'Connor, who had 5 games played last year, may very well get a shot at being that 13th forward or getting called up here and there. It's a good group. It's a deep group. If Kaut's ready to jump in, or if Haminev is healthy and he's ready to jump into a spot, Haminev could definitely end up on one of the wings. You could end up having a situation where they have too many NHL level players, and either somebody who's a relatively big name gets waived, or you see somebody get traded out. So it's going to be interesting to see where their forward group lies once we reach, say, end of September, early October. Their blue line, there's some interest there as well. So on the blue line, you've got Gerard, who I'm assuming is going to play those top minutes, and Johnson, Zadorov, and Makar. You have Bowen Byram, and in an ideal world, Connor Timmins would have shaken off his post-concussion syndrome symptoms. The reality is Timmins, they have no idea. He shut down until the fall to even skate and make the effort. He missed all of last year. And it's one of those really kind of tragic things. So Kelly Rosen, there's too many left-handed defensemen. Rosen can slip into this spot. Kelly Rosen really never got the opportunity in Toronto. I don't think Babcock was a fan of his game. I do think he can be a top 6 defenseman in the National Hockey League, and I think he could slip into that spot. And of course, they have Kevin Connaughton, who they signed, or they traded for. Mark Barberio as well, who played 12 games last year. Ian Cole still listed as injured, but Ian Cole's a top 6 defenseman when he's healthy. The one thing is, if Rosen steps in and plays well, Connaughton and Barberio are there. For me, Ian Cole is trade bait, because there's only so many defensive positions to go around, and Cole is still, in my eyes, an NHL level defenseman. And then there's Ryan Graves lurking around out here too. So there's a lot of depth on this blue line. Again, if not for injury, if Timmins was in this top 6 with Byram and Makar, you'd have a very talented, very young defense core. As it stands, and that's why I've got the red plus symbol, like the first aid symbol. It's too bad. So I've got Timmins in there only because I wanted to mention him, not because I'm saying he's going to make the roster or anything. He's not. Goaltenders, Philip Grubauer and Pavel Francouz. Now, Francouz, to us, is new. He's not. He's 29 years of age, and so he's either ready to play right now or he's not going to play. He had 2 games at the NHL level last year, and he looked pretty darn good in them. So I would think that Sakic's probably pretty satisfied with Francouz, and between Francouz and Grubauer, they believe they have a good tandem. if there's any cracks in this tandem in the preseason, I don't think Sakic will hesitate to make a move to make things better. But when you look at what Carolina did picking up McElhinney on waivers, it's possible to improve your goaltending tandem without mortgaging your future or really trading much of anything away. So I would keep an eye on that goaltending because it is something I'm mildly nervous about from a Colorado standpoint. If you look at who's going to lead them in goals, I think it's Mackinnon. I think it'd be hard for anybody to pass Mackinnon unless it's a monster year for Landeskog with goals. Dark horse, I'm going with JT Compher as a dark horse on this team because even though he's top 6, I think he's capable of scoring more than the 16 goals he scored last year. As long as he's healthy and consistent, I think it's more than 20 goals, and I think the talent is there. Between Kerfoot and Compher, I think they traded the right one. I think Compher was the right one to hold on to if it was a choice of one or the other. But I just think there's more offense there too. And then what about? I have Tyson Jost. Jost, it's kind of easy to forget this guy was a top 12. Well, he's number 11 draft pick, so I don't know why I was going to say top 12. He's number 11 draft pick. And he's shown signs. He's shown signs at the NHL level of that talent that made him a high draft pick. This could very well be a breakthrough season for him. Being behind Kadri, who knows, man, that might help him out being the number 3 center. Maybe he ends up with 15, 20 goals. It's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's possible. And for trade bait, I have, as I said before, Ian Cole. If he's healthy and if the rest of their blue line, if that depth shows they don't really need Cole, he may end up being a one that they put out there as, hey, he's available and somebody might pick him up. It's going to be a very interesting year for them. If I had to come up with where I think they're going to finish, honestly, it really depends on Grubauer and Francouz. Grubauer and Francouz will decide where this team ends up finishing. I honestly, I'm very, very, very bullish on Colorado this year. I wouldn't rule out first, but this division's really close. And for people who say, well, that seems like a wishy-washy result, it depends on Dallas, Nashville, St. Louis. Chicago is still in this as much as people want to think that they're not. And it's going to be a very, very tough division. Oh, and Winnipeg, right? So when you consider just how many good teams there are in this division, I could see Colorado being the best team. It's going to mean, again, if Rantanen ends up holding out into the regular season, all bets are off. Because then you've got to figure that Rantanen's going to take a while to get into the swing of things once he is signed. And it's going to take away 1/3 of that killer line. And then I don't know who you put with Landeskog and Mackinnon, but it's not going to work the same. And, you know, in general, this is a very good, very deep team. I think they can finish first. And the only thing stopping me from saying, oh yeah, first place, sure, is that I do wonder if Grubauer Francouz is going to work out all year. Because again, Grubauer's never shown over a full season, especially in a starting position, that he can do it. So I have some nervousness about that. But we'll see. Let me know what you guys think. Where do you think Colorado finishes? And there's going to be a lot of people saying no playoffs. And there's going to be people saying first. There's going to be people saying these guys are cup contenders. And people saying these guys are going to be in the lottery. Because that's how crazy the Central is. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support, for helping this channel grow. I will talk to you again soon.